Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Spectrum podcast. I am Jason Romano. Thanks for joining us on the program today. Before we get to our interview with Simon Gühring and learn about Germany and German professional baseball, I want to tell you about SportsSpectrum.com and our Sports Spectrum magazine. For just $18, covers the entire year. You can subscribe and become a member of the Sports Spectrum family by subscribing to Sports Spectrum's magazine. The magazine is the cornerstone, the foundation of what this ministry has been on for more than 30 years. So many people have told me when I came and worked for Sports Spectrum that they had the magazine when they were a kid, sort of an alternative to Sports Illustrated, telling stories of sports and faith. They've been doing that a long time. We're privileged to still be able to do that here with the podcast, but the magazine is still around, and it is a great tool to tell other people about sports and faith, to hand them a magazine, to have them read the stories, to look at the pictures, and the magazine is awesome. John Ackerman is our editor, and Aaron is our designer, and John and Aaron are awesome at what they do and make that magazine come out every quarter looking fabulous. So I can't recommend it more. Go to SportsSpectrum.com, SportsSpectrum.com, subscribe today, and while you're there, check out all the stories on the intersection of sports and faith. Today on the podcast, we do something we've really never done before on the podcast, and I always love when we can do something we've never done before, and this is take the podcast overseas and have a guest joining us from Germany, and his name is Simon Gühring. And Simon is a multiple German national champion baseball player who signed with the Brewers, believe it or not, Milwaukee Brewers, when he was 18 years old. He played 2 seasons there in the minor leagues, then played a season in the Netherlands, and then went back to Germany for 2005 and has been there ever since. He played 4 winters of winter ball in Cape Town, South Africa, played in 11 European Championships, 3 World Cups, 2 World Baseball Classic qualifiers, and 1 Olympic qualifier. And like I said, a multiple German national champion, 3-time German champion, and has been the team captain, the Germany team, national team captain since 2004. And he also does ministry in Germany too, which is really, really great how he's involved in baseball ministry in Germany. So I thought, why not talk to Simon and learn about what baseball is like in Germany, as well as what faith is like over there, and learning about Simon's journey through faith in Christ to becoming what he is now, which is in many ways an evangelist for Christ through the game of baseball in Germany. So check it out, Simon Gühring, our interview here on the Sports Spectrum podcast, German national champion baseball player. Let's take a listen. Joining us from Germany is Simon Gühring, and Simon is a German professional baseball player, and there's a whole lot more that comes with Simon's journey and his career, and I'm looking forward to diving into that. Simon, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to talk to you, Simon. And first, let's start very generically here with baseball in Germany. You're a professional baseball player in Germany. What is that like? And I know that you kind of came up through the Brewers minor league system, so you know how American baseball is played. You played baseball here in America. Kind of tell us what that is like, if it's any different, if it's the same, as far as the way it's played, the way the games are run, preparing, all that stuff. Tell us about baseball in Germany.
Well, baseball, it's not one of the big sports in Germany. I mean, obviously soccer is the main sport. Baseball is still on the rise, but not comparable with any of the bigger or very big sports. It is very American influenced. I mean, you see other countries, they're very Asian influenced, but I think the way that the game's played in Germany is more the American way. But level-wise, we do have quite a few good players, some professionals, but we don't have the depth. So most of the teams they have a strong lineup and a few good pitchers, but if players go down, it goes the level of play goes down quite rapidly. So we're still trying to build a bigger, I guess, base, get more players involved, and hopefully get some of the talent from other sports that will fall in love with baseball the way I did a couple years ago. So,
is it a sport for the kids growing up and high school kids to play? Is it offered as a sport like it would be here in America to play in school and to play recreationally?
No, I mean the way the school's set up, we don't really have like sports teams in school. So not even soccer, not even the major sport here is played in university or high school. It's all club sports. So it is a little different. So we got to get the kids to, I guess, not play soccer or team handball, which is another major sport. And we got to kind of steal them away from their sport. And then they would just, part of a club, they come to practice 2-3 times a week after school. So it's not really a school sport.
How did you become a baseball player then growing up? When did you first get acclimated to the sport and become a baseball player and kind of fall in love with the sport?
Well, I'd never even heard of baseball or seen baseball until I was about 10 or 11. And my dad took me to a baseball tournament that was organized through a Christian sports ministry here in Germany and with a partner in the U.S. And my dad took me there, and I saw it, and I immediately, I guess, fell in love with it. And then only after found out that my hometown actually has a first league baseball team. So even though I was living in that city, I had never really heard of it. So I just kind of went to one of their vacation camps. It's kind of what they call it. My brother was actually going to go with one of his American friends, and the American friend got sick, and I really wanted to go. So my brother had to take me. He didn't want to, but he had to, and I stuck with it. And he didn't play very long. So that's how I got started.
That's interesting. And you're the national team captain now for Germany and have been since 2004. Why don't you tell us about, from the faith side, I know that you and I spoke beforehand or, exchanged email messages about you growing up in a Christian home. But then there's a couple questions I have about faith in Germany, but really just tell us your testimony, because at some point, the faith that you grow up in has to become your own faith. So tell us about faith growing up, and then when you made Christ the Lord of your life, at the point when you were able to kind of say yes to God for yourself.
Yeah. Like you said, I grew up in a Christian home, so I was always around it. And then as far as I remember, I always had that faith that there was God and Jesus. But it was actually at that same tournament that my dad took me to, where I saw baseball, and there was a baseball missionary, Tom Roy, who shared the gospel, and he's talking about how God wants to be our coach. And that's the first time I remember that it actually, there was something that I felt like God wanted more, and he really wanted to have that relationship and that commitment. So that's when I guess I made that commitment to be a follower of Jesus, which, I mean, it was a process, I think. Even after that, just trying to, I guess, learn how to walk with Jesus. And but when I would have to, I guess, point out a time when I really opened up my heart for Jesus, it was then. And ever since then, it's been a ride with ups and downs, and still learning and trusting.
Simon Gühring is our guest here from Germany on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Simon, what is sort of the faith culture like in Germany? How is faith a part of the culture of the communities in Germany, compared to maybe the U.S.? Is that the dominant faith? Tell me more about the faith side of things in Germany.
And I guess technically we are a Christian country, which I don't know if that is still true. I feel like really it's Christianity has become less and less popular, if you can put it that way.
Sure.
People leaving the church, maybe one of the reasons is that we pay church taxes. So if someone doesn't really have a faith, they want to stop paying. So people are leaving. Also, there's been, I guess people have been burned by the church or something. So I guess people wouldn't typically say that they're Christians if they're not. I feel like there are other countries where it's more common that people they would call themselves Christians because they're not Muslim or they're not something else. Which here, I don't feel like that's really happening. I mean, people look at you kind of funny now when you actually say that you believe in Jesus and He's the Lord of your life, and they don't know what to do with it. So, it's not, I guess, very popular. I think even when it comes to ministry, we got to go about it a little different than maybe in the U.S., where I feel like it's more acceptable, or people accept it easier if you say you're a believer.
So what do you mean by going about it a little differently? Expand on that, because you are in ministry. You work for what I've been told is the sort of the German version of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. You work with UPI and their ministries, and are doing clinics and kind of teaching Bible studies and leading from a ministry perspective. But what do you mean by going about it a little differently?
I feel like people definitely don't appreciate it if you just kind of put it in their face. It's very, at least the way I do it is very relational. I try to spend a lot of time with my teammates on the national team, but also on my club team, other like people, just to build relationship and kind of live out my faith. And hopefully at some point they'll see that there's something different, and or that along the way I'll get a chance to talk to them about my faith. And so I think it takes time. I think someone just coming in kind of dropping the Jesus on them is not something that really works in Germany, just because so many people are, I guess they're proud of their education. They need to understand everything, and it's not part of the culture anymore here. So, I feel like there are other countries where it can be a little easier. I'm more, I guess, a very relational guy, relational ministry.
Yeah. Simon, tell us about your baseball journey. I know you signed with the Brewers when you were 18, the Milwaukee Brewers here in the U.S., and played a couple years there and then left. So tell me about what transpired through that. Maybe even share a little bit about how your faith played a role, if at all, in your baseball decisions on going different places. But let's start with being 18 and coming into the U.S. and the Milwaukee Brewers minor league system and how that took place.
Yeah, that was I was only the third German to sign a professional contract in the States. So it was not a lot of, I guess, experience or guys that I could ask about what it's like to be playing in the States. And so it was definitely a very big difference. I remember back then, and my first year was in 2002. Most of the pitchers, they would be around maybe 85, 88, didn't really see a lot of velo. And then you come to the States and there's guys that throw mid 90s or, even a little higher. And there was a big adjustment, trying to hit that kind of velocity and playing every day. I was in Phoenix, Arizona during the summer. So we would pretty much practice for about 3 hours, go back inside, eat a quick snack or something, and then go play a game. But we'd be out on the field at 7, and then after the game lift. So it was like a full day, up to 119, 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So it was just, it was a very big difference to what I've, I guess, been accustomed to. So there was definitely a big change. Then getting released and going through all that, I think that's where my faith really helped me. I was never, it was a dream for me to play professionally in the States, but when it was over, I was just like, okay, so what's next? Yeah. So it wasn't really like I guess it didn't leave much of a scar. I knew that God had a plan for me, and if it wasn't there, it was something else. And now looking back at my baseball journey, my faith journey, I can really see how God really led me through everything that I went through, and how He prepared me for what I'm doing right now, and it's baseball ministry in Germany. Just the fact that I play professionally in the States gives me a platform. But if I would have stayed, I guess, in the States a long time, then I'm not really one of them here anymore. Yeah. It's like, this guy, he's over there and whatever. But I was over there, I guess, long enough to have a platform and a status. But really, I was always with these guys that I'm ministering to now. I've been back playing here for 14, 15 years. The national team, I've been on the national team since '99, so I was always around. So people know me quite well. I believe they trust me, so it gives me a really very, very good platform to share Jesus with them. So looking back at it, I can see God's hand guiding my path, and I couldn't be any happier than doing what I'm doing now.
So explain what you're doing now as opposed to, from the ministry side and from the baseball side, and maybe talk about how you intertwine those, because this podcast is where faith and sports intersect. And so obviously that's your world, faith and sports intersecting in baseball. Tell me about right now as a baseball player, but also in many ways as a minister, how that looks in your life.
Yeah. I work with 2 Christian organizations. One is a German sports ministry called SRS. They're in, I think, 26 or 27 different sports doing ministry. So I kind of run their baseball team or side of it. Yeah. And then, becoming, UPI was a big factor in my life, in my faith journey and discipleship and all that. So I worked with Unlimited Potential, and they minister to professional baseball players in the States. So those are kind of like my baseball ministry connections. And what I do here is I organize baseball camps, clinics. For example, we have 2 camps that are each year in Germany. One is in Italy, that is a spring training for German players that are trying to get ready for the season. So we have them for a week. And all coaches are Christians, former professionals. And we train them, but then share our faith, our life with them. Organize and do another trip to South Africa, Cape Town, where I've played 4 winters. So I'm kind of trying to go back to all the places where I've either played or have connections to, and just use that, the relationships I have, to share Jesus. So here on my team, I do a weekly Bible study. We had, I think there was 6 or 7 of us all year that were part of the Bible study. And also when we meet with the national team, I try to do Bible studies. And yeah, it's very, I guess, discipleship focused. And then, the trips are, evangelistic.
You're 35 now, Simon. How much longer do you want to play? And how much, because you're getting there, at least in the States, 35 is that age when people start thinking about, moving on and doing something else. How much longer do you want to play?
Well, I honestly, I didn't have a goal when it came to, I want to be playing until whatever, I'm 38 or whatever, or this tournament, or,
right.
I mean, my body was still feeling good. So my thing was always, if it works, like if my family's supporting it, if it's able with the other work that I'm doing, if my body feels good and I can still help, I want to play, since that's my ministry field. So I feel like being a player is the most natural fit in a team. So as long as I can, I guess, stay on the field and stay healthy and do all those things and be a help, I felt like I want to keep playing. But this past season, I did have a shoulder injury, a labrum injury, which is not fun. So that was the first time that I was like, I mean, this could be done a lot sooner than I thought. So this is really I guess a situation where I'm trying to figure out how long I can do this with my shoulder. Because I didn't opt for surgery until now, just because of the fact that I am 35 and I don't know if I can come back from a surgery like that and be able to really throw and go through all the rehab and doing all those things. So to just maybe play one more season healthy, So
sure.
I might be moving from the catcher position more towards first base or DHing, but I don't really have a set date or tournament or anything that I want to play and then be done.
Okay. Well, that's good. Keep playing as long as you can. That's what I always said to athletes that I worked with here in the States is, listen, if you're thinking about retiring, that's fine, but play as long as you can until you can't play anymore, because the platform that you have when you play will never be the same when you're not playing to impact other people. So I completely understand that. Simon, this has been great talking to you. Let me close it with this. In this season of life, and you certainly seem to have your purpose in place and know the mission that God has given you and who he is towards you in your life, what is he teaching you right now? What are you learning from God, where he has you in this season of life at 35 in Germany, married, couple of kids, 3 kids, still playing baseball, and the impact that you're having on so many others? What is God teaching you right now?
I mean, definitely that. It's unbelievable to me how he's able to provide all the things that we need, even that we want at some stage. And being in a very small sport in Germany and being able to work in baseball ministry is crazy to think about, because there's not a lot of financial support coming from players, as they're not making really a whole lot of money. But he's providing. He's so faithful, and he's definitely now with my injury, he's teaching me to my time is going to be over at some point where I am going to be a natural fit in my team. And when I had this injury, I really felt like God was telling me to be intentional with my time. As long as I was still around these guys, because it really did hit me. I was like, man, I might be. This could be it this season, and I have so much more that I want to share with these guys, and so just to really be intentional with the time that we have our platform that we're given. If it's on a baseball field, or if it's in a workplace, or if it's in the family, or whatever it is, really be intentional and sharing Jesus and making disciples that make disciples. And so that's really something that I'm learning a lot right now.
It's a great word, intentional. Simon Gühring, this has been great talking to you from Germany. Thanks for sharing a little bit about what it's like to be in Germany as a man of faith and playing baseball. And hopefully we'll have you back on again sometime down the road. And we wish you nothing but the best. Thanks, Simon.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And many thanks to Simon Gühring, the German professional baseball national champion, for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Fascinating to learn about baseball in Germany and his journey through faith, through baseball, and kind of how they both intersect. And really great to see him doing baseball ministry in Germany and really impacting lives for the kingdom. So great stuff there from Simon. Really appreciate him joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. We also want to thank you for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast and encourage you to subscribe to this podcast everywhere they're found: Google Play, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Subscribe to the Sports Spectrum podcast. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell them all about the intersection of sports and faith and the stories being told here at Sports Spectrum. Also, leave a review. We would love to have you do that over at Apple iTunes and let people know about Sports Spectrum that way. It's a great way to get the podcast seen and heard by more people. Also, check out all of our social media channels: Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and give us a follow. Give us a tweet. Let us know that you heard our podcast. We'd be happy to retweet you and send you a note back. Always appreciating that. Also, our YouTube channel, where you can subscribe and get stories and videos every day on the intersection of sports and faith, including this podcast. Every single podcast can be found on our YouTube channel as well. And of course, all of our content is found at sportspectrum.com, and check us out there and sign up for our weekly email. Every Wednesday we send out an email from Sports Spectrum letting you know about the stories and the podcasts that you might have missed in the previous week. Thanks so much for joining us here on Sports Spectrum. We'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day.